Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On Deck podcast. I'm your host, Roberto, and today we have a lot to talk about. We have multiple injuries coming from the Yankees camp with Garrett Cole, possibly, and Giancarlo Stanton. We have injuries from the Orioles with Grayson Rodriguez going down. We have the Athletics spending money. Who would have thought that would happen? We have the Jays and Vladdy. An actual number had come out on the possible extension that they weren't able to agree on. And we have an interesting minor league deal to talk about. So strap in, and you're in for a good one today. So coming into spring training, I'd say the Yankees had one of the better rotations in the MLB with headlines of Cole and Fried, obviously. Then you have Rodon, Clark Schmidt, Luis Gil, Marcus Stroman. You just had a bunch of arms in the fire for that team. But now with possibly Garrett Cole going down and the injury to Luis Gil already, that rotation isn't looking the same, unfortunately. And with Garrett Cole, his spring starts haven't looked particularly great. I know it's spring and, guys are usually working on things. And I took a deeper dive into the pitch mix of both of his starts, and he's throwing a lot more of his changeup and sinker, which are his fourth and fifth pitch. So I guess he's been working on that, trying to get a better feel and refinement for those pitches. But it wasn't until after his second start that there was news that he was feeling a little bit of elbow discomfort after the game. And as a Yankees fan, this isn't great news because that's almost the exact same thing that he was dealing with in last year's spring training, and that caused him to miss a significant amount of time. And the Yankees really felt that with their pitching, because Garrett Cole the last decade or so has been one of the most durable pitchers in the MLB. You can always punch him in for at least 180, 190 innings and striking out over 200, 250 batters. He's been quite literally a dog for the Yankees. And to see him go down with an elbow thing, the second time this elbow issue has come up, it's kind of a little worrying, because with that MRI he got on Friday, they didn't really release what the exact issue was. They're looking to get a second opinion on it, which kind of worries me that it could be something really major. I'm praying that it's not Tommy John, because I do want to see a healthy Garrett Cole pitch alongside Max Fried. I think those guys can be a formidable 1-2 punch come playoff time. And the second half of Garrett Cole's season, I guess you could call it a second half, but more so late into the season and in the playoffs, he was looking like the Garrett Cole that we all know and love as baseball players, wanting to be that that ace of the staff, wanting to go deep into games and pitching in meaningful games. Like in the World Series, he had that game one start where he looked really good, and then the next start we obviously know about that that terrible fifth inning and just the absolute meltdown. But that's the Garrett Cole that we all expect for us to see every time he goes out there, every fifth day, is for him to be sharp on the mound and give you a chance to win every day, because he's going to give you 6, possibly 7 innings, the rare occasion that he goes 8, but he's going to want to be out there every single chance he can. And to see him go down this early into the spring, especially with an elbow injury, kind of worries me for the future of this rotation, because now it gets really thin really quick, because you would now have Max Fried at the top, Rodon, who's been very up and down. You have Clark Schmidt, who you're expecting big things from. He had a great first half last year until going down to the lat strain. But then you have Marcus Stroman, who was supposed to be in competition for your 5 spot, but now, you slot him into the 4 and you hope for the best. And then you have Will Warren, who's looked really good in the spring, but in his cup of coffee last year with the Yankees, didn't look great. You know, you're obviously hoping that another year under his belt, he does look a little better. But still, that's a lot of question marks for this rotation without Garrett Cole being that number one headline. Now, moving on to another Yankee with unfortunate news, Giancarlo Stanton. I know we touched upon this a couple weeks ago with him having those tennis elbow issues in both of his elbows, but now it's looking like it's quite a lot more serious than we all anticipated. Um, he already went for his second round of PRP injections this or last week, and he's going back for a third round at some point next week. But honestly, this is it's a big hit for the lineup because he's just another bat that you need to be worried about in that lineup. And yes, he Stanton goes through his very cold streaks and then his very very hot streaks. He's just that kind of player. The thing that really surprised me is that they reported that this issue had come up at some points last year, and Stanton was just fighting through it. And honestly, that just it really speaks to me because the man really showed up in the postseason, and to be playing through the amount of pain that he's been having in both of his elbows, he really just sold out for the postseason and just wanted that World Series so bad. And again, I go back to that fifth inning meltdown that really just ended the game for the Yankees there. But Stanton, if he kept producing for the two more games that series could have went, he's hands down the MVP of the World Series. He was just that good throughout the whole postseason, really. But really unfortunate news, and hopefully surgery doesn't need to happen on both of his elbows. Brian Cashman, the GM of the Yankees, had said that surgery hopefully is like a last resort and they don't need to, because I'd assume that would be season ending, because the elbows are quite important, especially in swinging, as Stanton isn't really throwing the ball or playing the outfield anymore. But yeah, it's just not looking good with these two big names for the Yankees going down at essentially the exact same time. And now moving on to another team in the AL East, we have news that Grayson Rodriguez is going to miss some time with some right tricep tightness. This was first reported after his first Grapefruit League start, which was on Wednesday. And the pain was bad enough that the Orioles just immediately shut him down. He said he was feeling it in the back of his elbow, in that tricep area. And so manager Brandon Hyde had made the decision to shut him down for... He is set to receive a cortisone shot on Sunday. And then the plan is for the next 7 to 10 days, to monitor it. And then he will begin to ramp up his throwing again. And if this doesn't help the issue, I think this could be a major hit to that rotation, which was already kind of thin to begin with, other than obviously losing out on Corbin Burns, but then having only Eflin and guys like Dean Kramer and Charlie Morton and Tomiyuki Sagano to really fill in those innings that you're missing out in the production that you're getting from a Corbin Burns. I really don't think that it's going to work out for them. I think that team is going to have to score a lot more runs because that starting rotation is, outside of Eflin, I think it's a lot of five and dive guys. So the bullpen is going to get overworked. And speaking of that bullpen, Andrew Kittredge, one of their free agents that the Orioles did sign for 1 year, $10 million. He is going down with arthroscopic knee surgery, so he's going to miss a few months as well. He would have been a very viable seventh inning guy for them. He is obviously one of the top guys in the league when it comes to recording holds. So a really guy that you can consistently count on in that bullpen. But missing him will be a large hit. They'll have to rely more on guys like Sir Anthony Dominguez, a better season from a Gregory Soto. Same thing goes for Yennier Cano, and obviously you have Felix Bautista coming back from Tommy John, but can't be expecting him to have a massive workload, especially him being the closer and coming back from Tommy John. It's just not really something that you want him to do. So, but going back to the effect that Rodriguez has going down for this rotation, I think it gets thin very quick. You could see a guy like Cade Povich come up for a little bit if the G-Rod injury becomes something that puts him out for a prolonged period of time. But yeah, the rotation isn't looking very solid. I think you have a lot of question marks. I know you have a guy like Tyler Wells coming back at some point, but again, there's guys in there that you don't really feel too confident about pitching for you every fifth day. But now moving on to some better news. We have the Oakland Athletics, or pardon me, the Sacramento Athletics. That still won't ever feel right to me saying that. But they spent some money and they extended Lawrence Butler. They extended him for 7 years, $65.5 million, and this is honestly a great day if you're an Athletics fan. Lawrence Butler was not great in the first half, quite honestly. And then come All-Star break, he made some changes in his swing, his stride, and when he decides to swing. And he became one of the MLB's best hitters in the second half. If memory served me right, he had 2 games of 3 homers, and that just doesn't happen to random guys around the league. He's always had the good power potential, being an athletic guy, playing first base, but also can play the outfield as well. And I think the potential was always there. He never really put it together at the major league level. Had always put some good minor league numbers up. And I think in the second half, he really started to get it clicking for him. And I think with him and Brent Rooker and all the prospects that they have coming up, I think this could be a lineup that, isn't going to wow you immediately, but, give them some time to develop. They signed Rooker for, I think it was a 6-year extension. They have Butler for at least 7 years. They could be building something here in Sacramento, and I think the future is getting a lot brighter and a lot quicker than most people had thought. Personally, I still think that they need to make some more additions on the pitching front. I think Severino will be okay. I think he will, digress a little bit. Jeffrey Springs, he's solid, but the rest of that rotation, is not good. And outside of Mason Miller, that bullpen is pretty bad too. I think they blow a lot of games if they don't get Miller in there as quickly as possible. But I think that's the last thing that Sacramento. I keep wanting to call them Oakland, but that's not who they are anymore, unfortunately. But I think that's what they're missing is some good pitching because Langoliers was great. Really showed the great power potential and his defensive ability throwing guys out. At first base, I do think Nick Kurtz can make a difference at the major league level. At second base, they have Geloff, or they could put Wilson over there as well too. But I do think that one of the two there, they'll fill out that position well. And then, I just think there's a lot of guys on that team that are just solid young prospects that have the potential to develop into really solid big leaguers. And now from one extension that was signed to an extension that wasn't able to get signed. We're going to talk about Vlad and the Jays not being able to agree on an extension. And I did cover this a few weeks ago when spring training was going to start. And the Vlad and the Jays weren't able to come up to a number that they were able to agree on. But now a number has come out. Vlad was looking for in the 14 to 15 year range. and the money number was just under 600 million. And first first thing that comes to my head is, damn, that is a lot of money. But, for a player like Vlad, like I said in the previous time that we had talked about this, he is 100% worth it. If we look at his numbers, he's producing every single year and being one of the better hitters in the MLB. And yes, he does have his quote unquote down years where I think that one year in 2022 or 2023, he put up like a 120 OPS plus, and that's great because he's 20% above league average. But for one of the best hitters in the MLB, you're expecting him to be in that 150 to 160 range. Actually, showcasing that he has the potential to win multiple MVPs in his career, and him hopefully being an MVP for the Jays. But with them not being able to come to an agreement on this number, just under 600 million is really, worrying for the Jays. Like I said before, he's competing now. The Jays are competing now against 29 other teams for Vlad services. And even if the Jays were to give him that 600 million, if we, calculate it out for a 14 or 15 year range, he's going to have an AAV of about 40 to $45 million per year. And in my eyes, Vlad is worth it. And who knows what the market will look like, in 5 or 6 years, because we have guys that are getting that amount of money now that are much older. So who knows how the money transactions, change in the future of the MLB, but I think this could be, a real building block for the Jays, having that cornerstone piece, that homegrown talent that you've watched develop over the years. And obviously, me being from Toronto, is you see Vlad Guerrero jerseys everywhere. He's a fan favorite in the whole country, basically. And again, I will die on this hill. If the Jays do not sign him to some kind of, career lifelong extension, I think it's going to be one of the biggest mistakes that Ross Atkins makes as a GM, because this is your guy. This is the guy that you're going to have in a Jays jersey forever. And I think if fans see him in another jersey, I think the Jays are going to be, behind the 8 ball for a long time. You just signed Santander for the 4 years, possibly 5 if he opts into that 5th year. But what are you gonna do with that? Like he's an aging guy. Is he gonna be the face of your franchise at 31, 32 years old? Like, there isn't really anybody to build around at that point. You don't have any young guys coming up in the system that are anywhere close to being at the same level that Vlad was as a prospect. I know you have Tiedemann that seems like it's been injured for like the last 5 years now, but outside of him, there isn't really anybody that comes to mind as like a really hyped up Jays prospect. So I'm going to be closely monitoring how this offseason goes, especially for the Jays, because if they don't sign him early in the offseason, like within the first couple weeks, I think that, the longer that this whole interaction goes on with them going back and forth, or possibly Vlad meeting with other teams, I think the worse chances that it is of him actually coming back, because then, he's seeing what other teams are offering him. And I think, in my opinion, if, the number is somewhat close to what other teams are offering, I think he comes back to the Jays just because, that is where he's the most familiar with and has a history with the team. And I think it could be something good if the Jays are giving him the right amount of money, because him being so young, I think the years could also come into play. I don't think he goes for a short term with so many opt-outs like everybody's doing nowadays. I think he goes for, that really big contract that sets him off for the rest of his career. Now, moving into our last piece of the day, it is a really interesting one, and I'm interested to see what your guys' thoughts are on it. It is Tyler Naquin, was a really good platoon bat for the Cleveland Guardians, then known as the Indians, but Cleveland. He was also part of the Mets, Cincinnati, and had a cup of coffee with the White Sox in 2023, and that was the last we saw of him in Major League Baseball. But as of a couple days ago, he had signed a minor league deal back again with the Guardians, but as a pitcher. And, I think that's really cool. He was always known for having a great throwing arm, especially from the outfield. But this is cool in the sense that this is now the second player that the Guardians have taken where they were a position player and now transferring into a pitcher. The first one being, as a Jays fan, I'm sure that everybody's familiar with Anthony Gose. He was part of the David Price deal that had brought Price over for that massive run to the playoffs that the Jays had back in the mid 2010s. But you never really heard again from Anthony Gose as a position player. And it wasn't until 2021 where he had signed with the Guardians and decided to make the change to become a position or a pitcher. And he was always a really good defender out there in center field. Always had a good arm. So the good arm transitioning onto the mound was, something that I thought was really cool. He had, an upper 90s fastball, occasionally touching triple digits. I saw him pitch against the Yankees a couple times, and he touched 101, which was insane to me. But never really had the success. He also had like control issues as well. Never really had like it pitch outside of the fastball. He did throw an occasional slider, but big arm was just the fastball. So with Tyler Naquin, I will kind of be interested to see if it's the same thing. I'll be tuning into, some Guardian spring training games to see if he ever gets in. But I think it's just something cool to look at because, that's one guy that, was persistent of being like, hey, I don't think I have, finished out my MLB career. Let me give it one more shot and use a different tool because he was always a good power bat. Especially facing right-handed pitching as a lefty. So using that arm as another tool that, he was given throughout his career and seeing if, you can extend that career a little bit, even if it is pitching in the minors for a couple years, developing a little more, and then making a bump up to the big leagues because we all know what Cleveland could do with their arms. Just look at their bullpen last year. Brought in Cade Smith, an undrafted rookie, and was absolutely disgusting. So it's just a pitching lab out there. So Naquin will be, someone to monitor in maybe a bullpen role. Who knows? I just think it's really cool to see guys, stepping outside of comfort zones, and same thing with like a Brett Phillips in the Yankee system. Didn't really hear too much about him last year. But it's just cool to see that, guys are never willing to really give up playing baseball and are willing to do whatever it takes to keep playing the game they love. But with that being said, that concludes everything for today's podcast. Today was a little bit of a longer one, a lot to cover throughout the league. But I hope all of you enjoyed today's podcast. Let me know your thoughts below in the comment section. Curious to get everybody's thoughts, especially on the Vlad Jr. situation, especially from Canadians and Jays fans. Kind of curious to see what your guys' thoughts are on it. But I would appreciate everybody to rate and review on Apple Podcasts and 5 stars on Spotify. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. Again, helps the podcast get out to, other baseball lovers around there. And hopefully in the next episode that we come on, hopefully there's a little less injuries to be talking about and more so, developments or some great news to be talking about. But in that case, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you.